Hey, welcome back to my table. My name is Daniel. I'm just a guy who's identified how loved and adored I am by God. It's my purpose and my passion in life to help everyone I meet understand their place of value in the kingdom and to the heart of God. One of the ways God has let me do that is to write a book called Solomon's Song. It's a 90-day devotional, and it takes each passage of the Song of Solomon and breaks it into 90 individual love letters from God and shows that relationship between the pursuer, God, and the pursued, that's us, the bride of Christ. And it shows how that relationship looks and the beauty and the depth inside of that. And so right now we're in day number 20, and the title of our devotion is called I Just Called to Say I Love You. And the verse that we're looking at is Song of Solomon chapter 2 and verse number 8. In this passage, the bride is speaking about the king, and she's speaking about a very specific aspect of the king. And there's a beautiful correlation that I want to bring to our attention today. So we're looking at Song of Solomon 2:8, and she said, "The voice of my beloved," with an exclamation point. She says, "Behold, he cometh leaping upon the mountains and skipping upon the hills." And at first glance, you look at the words that are used there. Leaping and skipping, those are action words. And skipping, of course, is like I think of Barney. I love you, you know. And it's not skipping. He's not just skipping and frolicking like a deer. She was basically just saying, my beloved is moving. He's in motion. He's moving, and I hear his voice. And what she was saying is, I love to hear his voice speak. I love everything about the king's voice because the king's voice is tied to the king and it reflects his heart. It's the way that his heart can vocalize feelings that his mind has. And so the king has been speaking to her up until this point. And so as he speaks, and the words that he has said are very chosen very carefully, and they're repairing wounds of her heart, and she has begun to become attracted to the voice of the king. And understand this in our relationship with God. The more you can identify his voice in your life, the more that you will want to never go another day without hearing it speak in your life, because his voice becomes attractive to you, the sound of God's voice. Now, most of us say, I never hear God speak. Well, Dan, God doesn't speak to me. I never hear the booming voice, the James Earl Jones voice of God speaking into my life, you know? No, we don't hear the audible voice. Sometimes it happens, but most times it is that still small voice, and it's in our spirit. You know, not every thought that we have in our heads is actually us. You know, not every thought that we have is us. Some are, it's a spiritual thing that's speaking as well. And so it's important to differentiate between the voice of the lion and the voice of the dove, and to know that in our heart, to know that in our mind, and to train our brain, train our heart to pick up on the voice of God. One of my favorite passages in Proverbs is Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. In all of thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy path." The word acknowledge means to search for or discover, like Indiana Jones, you know, searching for something to discover it. And the word "in all thy ways" simply means everything you do, everywhere you go, and in everyone you meet, search for and discover God. If you look for God in the things that you do, in the places that you go, and in the people that you meet in your life, what you'll find is that the voice of God is so far beyond audible, it's insane. It is loud. It's like this broadcast that's broadcasting over and over and over again. You get in your car, if you're like me, you get in the car sometimes and you're in a mood for music or radio. You turn on the radio or turn on your music or your CDs or whatever it is you listen to, and that music comes on. And it's awesome to me when you're in the radio, when you're playing the radio, that you turn on the radio, it's already in broadcast. Like, it didn't just start broadcasting the minute you turned it on. It has been broadcast. And then when you get to your destination, turn off the radio station doesn't just stop broadcasting. They keep broadcasting, and that signal is going out. The sounds are going out. The news is going out. That program is going out regardless of whether you choose to tune in or tune out. It's still there. And so it's awesome to me that God's voice is very much like this. It is broadcasting, it's speaking out, it's speaking over our entire planet, it speaks over our lives, it's speaking to us. And whether we choose to tune it out or tune it in is completely up to us. But just because I choose to tune it out doesn't mean that God stops speaking. He's constantly reaching out for you and for me, speaking to broaden our understanding of relationship with him. It's just the fact that sometimes we tune it out because we've convinced ourselves that God only speaks through a certain thing. God only speaks through the Bible. God only speaks through a pastor or a spiritual leader. Understand this, that God speaks through everything. Everything. If you look for God wherever you go, with everyone you meet, and in everything you do, you will hear his voice loud and clear. Give you an example. I was making a flight and a couple weeks ago, and as I was on the airplane, I got to my second flight was supposed to pick up, and I got stranded. And I got stranded. My flight got canceled. It was late at night. The flight got canceled, and they said your flight will not go out again to this destination until tomorrow in the afternoon. Well, that wasn't going to work. I went down to the ticket counter. Of course, there's a line of people there, and so you wait to get up in line to get to the counter. I said, I need to get to this destination. And they said, well, you're not going to be able to because those flights were canceled. And according to them, the ticket that I bought, because I bought the cheap one, and they said the ticket that you bought will not allow us to reroute you any other destination. You've got to go to this destination, and the only one going to that destination is the next day. I said, okay, so I'm stuck here. They said yes. So the airlines, in normal cases, sometimes they cancel flights. A hotel will pay for you to stay there overnight. This one did not, because they canceled it based upon the weather and not the aircraft problem, servicing issues. And so I was stuck at the airport, or I could pay for the hotel. And due to the amount of people that were out of looking for hotel rooms and things, a lot of them were filled up, and the ones that weren't were skyrocketed. And the ones that were cheap, there was no way to get to them from where I was without a cab, and all kinds of crazy stuff. I went to get my bag, and I said, your bag is in the baggage area, and it's going to take 4 to 6 hours to get your bag out. We have a backlog of people trying to get their stuff and changing flights, and so it's a madhouse. So I was no bag, and I was outside the airport. I could not get back into the airport because my boarding pass was now rescheduled for the flight the next day. I couldn't even get in the airport. So now I'm stuck outside the airport until the next day. This was not a good situation for me. I went and found a little place by a window, and I'm watching people frantically stress out about what they're going to do and where they're going to go and how they're going to get to where they need to go. And I just laid down on the floor up against the wall, and I put my jacket over my head, put my earbuds in, and I was just going to try to get some sleep until the airport opened in about 4 hours from that point. It was late at night. I was tired. I looked over, and there was a man sitting next to me, and he also had his hood up over his head, and he was listening to something that was, I heard words, spiritual words being brought out of what he was listening to. So I tapped him on the shoulder, and he said, is what I'm listening to offensive to you? I said, no. And we began to talk about faith. We began to talk about God. And he said he was a prophet, and he began to speak about things that I was going through in my life that there's no way he would know about. And even time someone tells me they're a prophet, I don't give them any information. I let them tell me, right? So we're talking about him and his situation that he lived in and what he was going through. And he was from Kenya, and so he was talking about that. He was talking about his home country and the ministry that God had for him and what he was doing here in the States. And he was, in fact, homeless. He said, I live here. I said, you live in the city? He said, no, I live in this airport. He said, I work in the airport, and just due to the nature of my situation, just the circumstances that he outlined for me, he's like, I have no place to live, and so I've been staying here at the airport, and I sleep for a few hours, and I go to work here, and I'm trying to save my money up. And he let me know what he was looking for and what he's trying to do. But then he came in to speak about me, and he said, Daniel, you understand that there's Daniel, and then there's the man of God, Daniel. And there's circumstances that happen in your life, and you need to learn how to discern, Daniel, the circumstances that happen to you, because as great as the message is that's attached to you, there's also circumstances that are just as great, and they're designed to accelerate that message into being. And he said, if you start taking those circumstances as Daniel's circumstances and not the message circumstance, he said, you're going to miss out on a lot of things. And so it's important to keep it out. And I'll draw it out for you this way, okay? So he said, this is you. He says, here you are. There you are, right? This is you. And he said, here's your goal. This is the direction you feel in your heart that you need to get to right here. He said, so you make a plan that says, I'm going to get here, right? This is me. Here's the plan that I need to have in my life. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm tracking with you. He says, but however, this is what you want. But God has the plan over here. He said, there's God's plan for you. But because you're so focused on this, oftentimes that message that you've been given is intended to go here. And the reason why God lets you have the dream here is because it gets you in the stratosphere of that area over here that you would never, ever look at. I don't know if you're following this or not. He said, then God shifts your life. This is the Proverbs where it says, a man makes his plans, but God directs his steps, right? The Proverbs 18:9. So that's that. He said, here it is. Here comes the shift in life, where all of a sudden something happens in life. Something takes place that goes against your plan. In fact, it seems to take you completely out of the way of what it is that you wanted. And so you're stuck here at this place. He said most people get stuck here, and they stay here and think that the circumstance of the shift was about them. personally, but the circumstance was never about you. The circumstance of the shift is about your message. And so that begins to bring you aboard and head you towards your message. If you can understand that not everything you go through in life is about you. And a lot of things in life, Daniel, are about the message that you have. And so you're going to have some extreme circumstances in your life and some elements of pain in your life. And if you understand that has nothing to do with you as much as everything to do with the message that you carry, God can shift you into the direction you need to go. And then he said, I need to get some sleep. But before I go to sleep, he said, I want to tell you that within the next 24 hours, God is going to confirm something in your heart. He's going to confirm this word for you. He said he's going to do that by helping you break the barrier of your Arabic book translation. And what made that significant is I never told the man about my Arabic book. You know, we're in the process of getting Solomon's Song put into Arabic, and it's a big deal. And working really hard to make that happen. And I hit a roadblock in an area. But he said there's an area that needs to happen, and you're going to have that resolved. Well, I got into the airport the next morning, made my way to the flight deck here, or the kiosk there to get my ticket all ready to go. And I'm confirming that's the 1 o'clock flight. And I saw there's a 9 o'clock flight. And I said, what about this one? They said, no, that one's full. But we'll put you on standby. And do you know I waited by that desk for that standby ticket seat if something happened, and every time the phone rang, I'd scoot a little closer. I'd do this. Can I get on the plane? And the last minute, she said, you cannot get on the plane. I got on the plane. It was the last seat, y'all. Went straight to the back by the restroom. I'm so happy to be on this flight on the way home. And all of a sudden, this lady sits next to me, and she's got writing on her finger. It's all squiggles right here. I said, what is that? And she said, that's love. I said, it doesn't look like love. She said, no, it's the Arabic word for it. You speak Arabic? Yes, I'm from Egypt. And she began to talk about herself and how her family were Coptic Christians. And we had this amazing conversation about life and about life and Song of Solomon and love and religion and God. And as we're talking about, I told her about the Arabic version of the book that I was working on. Her parents are translators for a university. And she's like, I would like you to see the book. And so we talked about it. And she looked at what I had and she said, you know what, I will help you with this. My family, my parents will help you with this. And the part that they would help me with was the part that I could not get past. I'm telling you, had anything about that situation been different, had I decided to stay up in the terminal and wait till the next morning, I would never have met John. I would never have met this man out of the blue sitting there sleeping homeless style outside the airport. And had I never met John, I never would have had someone help me understand with perspective about what I was going through. Had I never done that, I never would have looked at the board. I never saw that we had a flight for 9 o'clock. I never would have pushed to get on that flight. I never would have met the lady that was on that flight. Had I went on the 1 o'clock flight, I would have missed that person that I was supposed to meet in order to help that project move forward. And all I can say is this, that a lot of times we tune God's voice out because it is circumstance. It is problems. And we say that's not God because God only speaks to me through 66 books, or God only speaks to me through my church or my pastor. But the problem is, if God only speaks to you through your church, what happens when you miss church? What happens when your pastor moves or falls away or is not, he's sick? What happens when your pastor is no longer able to speak to you? Then you miss out on God's voice. Understand this, that God's voice is in everyone around us. It's in everything we do. It's in all our ways. He said, every way you have, acknowledge him, search for him, and he will direct your paths. There's this value that comes for looking and training your brain, resetting your pattern of thinking to search for the voice of God. She said, behold, the voice of my beloved. He's skipping, he's leaping over the hills. And she was training her brain when the king's in motion. Even though he's not here with me physically, he's out and about, he's moving, but I want to be cognizant of his voice. I want to be recognized. I want to be able to hear it and take it in because his voice has tremendous value to my heart. And I will say this, that God's voice has value to our heart, and to train our ears and train our heart, our prayer should be, would you train my spirit to hear your voice, and my sheep hear my voice. Our privilege of being a child of God is that we have the ability to hear his voice if we tune it in. But the problem is, it's just like any other voice in your life in the sense that you can tune it out. Wah, 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 wah. Remember the Charlie Brown cartoons? You can tune out the voice of God in your life just as easily as you can tune out a child asking you question after question, or tune out a spouse. It's all in what we do, intentionality. So let me ask you a couple questions today as we close out this episode. And that is, what did you see today? In all thy ways acknowledge him. Ask yourself, I do a little inventory at the end of each day. I say, of all the things that I saw today, what were the things that stood out to me that I saw? Of all the things that I heard today, what did I hear that stood out to me? In all the things that I did, the people that I met, who stands out to me? You look for his voice. You listen for it. It is very much like the radio in your car. You tune it in or you tune it out, but it never stops broadcasting. The prayer of my heart is, God, would you help me to tune in your voice every single day? Because I don't want to go a day without it. And what you discover is God calls every day to tell you that he loves you. He's not just called to say, I love you. And I'm going to do that through this homeless man. I'm going to do this through this ticket mess up. I'm going to do this through the plane mess up. And man, how easy is it to get distracted, to take that as a sign of judgment. I'm being judged by God because there's something valuable in there. It has nothing to do with you. The circumstances of your life have very little to do with you. It's more than they have as much to do with what you were called to do and who you were called to be. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Thank you so much for watching today. I can't wait for tomorrow. We're talking about glimpses of him, glimpses of God, and it goes along with today. And so if you like today, tune in on the next video, and you're going to see glimpses of God, because glimpses of him are powerful and they're everywhere. And when you train your brain to hear God's voice and to see God, it'll rock your world. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and we'll talk at you later. Bye-bye.